The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank is arguably the most widely known view of the Holocaust and the treatment of the Jews during that time. Ari Folman's adaptation, Anne Frank's Diary, the graphic adaptation, illustrated by David Polonsky, turns that classic story into a graphic novel. This adaptation takes excerpts from the original diary and combines them with visuals to tell Anne's story in a way that has never been seen before, using brightly colored illustrations to highlight Anne's optimism in contrast with darker panels to feature the dim world outside of the secret hiding place, and the use of images to convey large portions of Anne's original text without utilizing her actual words. This adaptation is the story of a Jewish girl, Anne, and her family as they go into hiding during the Holocaust. It is the true diary of Anne while they are in hiding, and the struggles that they went through as a family, but particularly Anne's personal struggles coping with going through puberty, her first love, and the criticisms of her family. The Frank family invites another family of Jews and a Jewish dentist to live in their secret annex during the Holocaust, and the group of 8 people struggle with being confined in the small space, the terror of being bombed, and the pangs of starvation, all while Anne is growing and maturing. Anne's story begins when she receives a diary as a gift and names it Kitty, and explains the struggles of the Jewish community around her as her family goes into hiding in a secret annex at the back of her father's office. Readers are then introduced into the struggles that the group went through throughout the devastation of the Holocaust prior to their eventual capture. While this adaptation version was originally published in 2018, Anne Frank's original diary was published for the first time in 1947, only 2 years after the Holocaust ended. And as I said earlier, Anne Frank is arguably the most widely known name in Holocaust history, aside from maybe Hitler. One of the most remarkable aspects of this adaptation is the use of the brightly colored illustrations that indicate Anne Frank's unerring optimism. Throughout her time in the secret annex, Anne continued to make plans for her future, although there were times of terror of being found, caught, or bombed. Anne seemed to consistently believe that she and her family would survive the carnage of the war and the Holocaust and find humor and joy in nearly every moment. When Anne explains quarrels in the apartment between the adults, Polonsky adorns the border of the full text of Anne's diary entry with Otto and Edith Frank and Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan, depicted as vibrant, fire-breathing dragon creatures, bringing a comedic tone to the entry. Although the entry discusses the disagreements of the adults, Anne approaches the subject as though she sees their animosities as childish. The creators illuminate Anne's tone splendidly through the designation of the fantasy creatures as the arguing adults. In addition to this, Polonsky is able to illustrate Anne's optimism through the images of her looking through the annex's attic window on page 104. Folman's use of pathos and images of birds gliding through the sky here draws the reader into Anne's idealism of the happiness still in her world. The birds represent the freedom that Anne wishes she could feel again. The final example of Anne's optimism is exemplified most in the 2-paged images on pages 80 and 81, where the members of the annex household are depicted on a cloud as bombs are dropped on the world below them in a world of destruction, but above the blended family, a crack of light streams in through the heavens above them. This image requires closure, or the act of observing parts but perceiving the whole, as defined in Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, as the page has only one box of text. The reader has to deduce the feelings coming from Anne based on the illustrations more so than from the text itself. In contrast, Polonsky also employs the use of dark images to portray the horror that was going on outside of the annex that still affected Anne and her family. The use of these images symbolized the darkness surrounding her life. Polonsky uses Anne's descriptions of danger lurking on every street corner as the Frank family goes into hiding. There's an image of a German soldier on the second panel smoking a cigarette and looking over his shoulder as they walk by on page 20. This image is one of the first with darker tones, as Anne's life takes a darker turn. Later, as the Frank family is living in hiding, at night, the bad thoughts creep into Anne's mind as she begins having nightmares about the stories she hears regarding the Nazi regime as she resides in the pseudo-safety of the secret annex. In the illustrations about this dream, Anne is in a bed surrounded by a slew of German soldiers with fiery-colored smoke in the background. The foreground of this image shows the same German soldier from the panel in which Anne and her family are retreating to the annex. Polonsky's use of the same image twice compels the reader to infer in their mind's closure that the sight of the German soldier when the Frank family went into hiding was highly significant to Anne. The creators emphasized the sight of that German soldier as the last time Anne had seen her enemy and possibly the only memory she has of the Nazis as her family went into hiding before their terror affected them directly. Using the same image twice invokes a sense of kairos in the reader as they connect these two moments in Anne's timeline. I definitely think that everyone should read this book. I think that it opens up a whole new view to Anne's story by including images and almost a different tone to the whole story itself. The creator's use of images to portray entire parts of Anne's story were incredible and really give the reader more of a sense of who Anne is. It really helped me to see Anne as a human being more than just a person in a book.